Okay, so welcome to the tutorial on the banning of lay investiture. To begin with, let's briefly recap on what lay investiture is. So now, hopefully, you should be able to explain it, especially if you've watched the previous video I made. So I want you now to try and think of the explanation of lay investiture, or look it up in your notebook or wherever you have your study notes. Okay, so lay investiture was when the kings had the right to choose who would have what positions in the church. So they were choosing church officials. This was a huge advantage because they would be able to choose the priests and bishops that supported them and therefore would give them more power against the Pope. That's just the brief summary of why it was an advantage. You should also know why the Pope or the Church would not be happy with this power that the kings had and why the kings were happy. But we want to know what happened when Pope Gregory VII banned lay investiture, okay? Henry IV, the emperor in Germany at the time, was using lay investiture largely to his advantage. And so Pope Gregory VII stepped in and banned lay investiture. He prohibited it. How did Henry react? Well, Henry reacted by calling all the bishops that he had chosen under lay investiture together along with other German princes, and he proposed that they all together ask for Pope Gregory VII to step down as Pope, to be deposed, you can see the word here, or to resign. Okay, the idea was to make Pope Gregory VII resign as Pope because they did not agree with his decision of banning lay investiture. However, Henry's clever idea did not work. Why? Well, because in retaliation, Pope Gregory excommunicated Henry. Okay, he asked or told Henry IV he was no longer in the church. Now, perhaps things wouldn't have been so bad if all the bishops and princes that had initially agreed with Henry IV in asking Pope Gregory VII to resign had continued supporting him. But they didn't. They very quickly changed their minds and said to Pope Gregory VII, oh, no, we do not support Henry IV. We don't agree that you shouldn't be the Pope. Of course he should be the Pope. And therefore, poor Henry was left all on his own, okay? He was alone and he was excommunicated. So perhaps you're thinking, well, what's the big deal? Henry IV's been excommunicated. Is it such a big deal? Well, the answer is yes. There are lots of consequences to this. Excommunication is when you are no longer part of the church. You cannot accept the sacraments, take communion, and in general it means you're outside of society. Remember, at this time in feudal society, the majority of people were Christians. The majority of people attended Mass and really valued and knew the importance of the church. And the church had huge influence within society through the monasteries, the clergy, but also the Pope had a lot of political, not only spiritual power. So Henry IV being excommunicated would have a lot of bad negative consequences for him as a king, as an emperor. The people are not going to respect him. He's not going to be able to continue holding his power. So what does he do? Well, Henry IV quickly runs over to Italy where Pope Gregory VII lives. Remember, he lives in Germany, and so he goes to Italy where the Pope lives, and he waits outside the Pope's palace for 3 days in the snow, which you can see in this picture, waiting for the Pope to listen to him. He's begging for forgiveness, okay? He says he's very sorry, he repents, he asks for forgiveness, he does not want to be excommunicated. This event is called the showdown at Canossa, because showdown means like a confrontation, and Canossa is the place where the Pope lived at the time. After 3 days, Pope Gregory VII finally listens to Henry IV and forgives him. As he's the Pope, he must. If a sinner repents, asks for forgiveness, the church must forgive. And so Henry IV is welcomed back into the church. Of course, Henry IV doesn't just leave it there. He quickly runs back to Germany to punish all those bishops and princes that had gone back on their word. Okay, he goes back to punish all those people that had not supported him. Oh, I hope that has explained quite simply the consequences of the banning of lay investiture. Thank you for listening, and don't study too hard.